Basically, this is an engine out of one of our blowers. It was wore out, used up, and determined to be unusable. So probably going to go out to get rebuilt and put on the shelf and ready to go back in when we need it.
How many hours or miles to get on something like that?
This engine, running 3 months a year, probably went 7 years, running 10 to 12 hours a day. And that's these Detroits are great for what we do. They're a two-stroke engine. They have a high torque, which is what we need for moving the snow. And they're actually in a 1960s made engine, but they're obsolete now, but they work great for what we do. But emissions are forcing us to go to something different these days, so we're going to CAT engines. First of all, beyond that wall is just a big wash bay where we can clean the equipment and get the grease off of it. And there's a high pressure washer back there and a big drain. This bay that you're looking at directly in front of you is a fabrication bay. It's where our welder resides. You can see a piece of equipment that came in. This is off one of our drag groomers that we pull behind in the wintertime to smooth the road, but as you can see, it's all busted here, and you'll probably cut some pieces and get it together and make it right again. And then walking down the bay here, Rob also does a lot of our gearboxes. As you can see, this one has failed, and it's probably going to get scrapped out. This is out of a rotary snowplow. It attaches to the engine, drops the drive shaft down to go to the head to make the reels and blow the snow, and that one's pretty much wore out too. We spend 3 months of the year packing the roads down, smoothing them out so people can snowmobile or snow coach on them, and that snow gets really, really hard, and trying to bust that up and blow it off is extremely difficult. The corridor between West Yellowstone and Old Faithful is the worst because that gets the most traffic. When we get up to areas on the east side of the park where traffic is lighter, it's not quite so bad. But you can tell when you move through different areas of the park how difficult it can be. For that time that we're doing the road to Old Faithful, we're welders at that point because the front rotary reels just break, and we're constantly grinding the old weld off and welding them back up to make them useful again. Our typical year for the snow crew season, we'll start bringing in the rotary equipment, the bulldozers, the graders, and around December, and we have until the first weekend of March to get them ready for the crew. We go through the whole machine, try to find the weak points, try to remember the year before, what broke, what didn't, and try to improve on them so that we don't have to fix them out in the field. But unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. Garbage trucks are a huge thing, ambulances, getting those ready for the summer. And unless something really big breaks out in the park that we can't fix it out there, it has to come into the shop, well then they'll work on it in here. This is nice because we have a crane on it, and we can do more work in the field with that 3-ton crane than if we didn't have it. Otherwise, more things would be coming back into the shop. We've been out in these trucks for 8 weeks, so they're kind of dirty. We live out of them for 8 weeks, so they're not the best looking at this time. We carry our own welders, we carry our own air compressors. We have a variety of battery operated tools, impact wrenches. I could open up the doors. We carry torches, welders. Got a variety of hoses and products that we use. We carry a lot of spare parts. Whoops. As you can see, we're well used. Carry a variety of spare parts so we can possibly fix something out there. We do carry, again, more spare parts and some of the things that we might need to fix it. Some electronic stuff for checking the engines, some of the newer CAT engines. Oxygen bottles, oxygen acetylene, welding, safety clothes. Stuff like that. It's a traveling shop, actually. Safety is a big deal in the park. We constantly have safety courses. This year when we were up on Sylvan Pass, when we were in the avalanche zone, we all got shovels, probe poles, and we all got beacons that we wear when we're in that zone. The rangers up there took about 2-3 hours, and we went through avalanche training again, so we still have that. I still have it because we have to go up on Dunraven, and that's an avalanche zone too, so we'll take that with us. Tucker and I both carry in our trucks a trauma kit. It has an AED and everything that if you got hurt really bad out there. I'm an EMT, so we do kind of watch out for each other in case something does happen. Thankfully, it never has yet, but we're ready for it if somebody should get hurt out there. Pretty much, you're pretty much never alone out there. Tucker and I usually work together, but if there's more than one thing broke down, I'll just go one my way, he'll go his way. But you always have the operator there helping you too. They just won't abandon you and leave you with a piece of equipment. They're actually there helping you. If you're underneath the truck or on top and you need a wrench or a hammer or something, they can hand you the tools, which is very helpful because I don't have to climb up or get underneath things so much. We do have little tub cleaners for cleaning parts. These are real handy. We don't use solvents. It's basically you put it in, you turn it on, it's like a big dishwasher. And the water is constantly recycled, reused. There's filters on it, but it's really a handy item. We do have a kind of a small machine shop here. We got our metal cutting bandsaw. We have a variety of stock material. If we have to make pins or anything like that, we've got some stock. We do have a Bridgeport mill and a small engine lathe, which we can make some of the parts ourselves or machine them down if we have to. Very handy because the nearest machine shop is 52 miles away. And if I can do something here in a couple of minutes rather than spend a day driving and getting it done, it really saves us some time. We use all of this somewhere on the equipment. Quick connect fittings. This is a small one, but this is something we can make here very easily. We don't have to go to town to have it done. And that saves us a lot of time. That is a 10-ton overhead crane. It can pick up just most anything that we have to work on, except some of the really big loaders. It's really a time saver. According to the work order, the plow frame is bent, so it needs to be straightened out and doesn't have any turn signals, and the plow light is out. So that's the work order that we generate to get the truck fixed and keep records of what we've done to them. We start with filters, oil and air. These are all air filters. We have a variety of cabinet here for miscellaneous small parts. Screws, walk washers, switches, you name it. Oddball items you might go to a hardware store for. This is kind of incoming. This is where the parts come in. Not much sitting here today, just some miscellaneous small parts. Bearings for the bigger stuff, we go through a lot of those.
I imagine just like
on some of this stuff, it's weeks. Particularly for hydraulic and hydrostatic parts, I requested a motor for one of the drives for the chute just to have for a spare, and that particular motor was 16 weeks out, and I still don't have it, but we'll have it for a spare when it comes in. So yeah, I mean, there is a lot of money in this room. We carry starters, alternators, electrical parts. Just this whole shelf right here is bulbs. And actually down this aisle, it's all bulbs for turn signals for trucks. As you can see on the back wall, we carry a stock of belts, V-belt and serpentine belts. Here's where all our yokes are that we break quite a bit sometimes, especially on the snow stuff. Snowcats in the park. Some Pernod, which used to be Bombardier, and some Piston Bully, but when they break, they want them fixed quick, so we carry spare parts for them. Again, carry a variety of hoses that we might need. And then on this side is John Deere parts. This next section is basically devoted to just snow crew parts. We carry extra drive shafts. So when one breaks, we can just grab one off the shelf, get out there and get it going again. Some of this stuff is obsolete. As you can see, we've been kind of cleaning house, getting rid of. These are all going to go out to auction. These are things that we don't need anymore, so they go out to GSA auction. In the back here are specialty tools that we don't always keep in our toolboxes, but taps and dies and some specialty hand tools. We do have some test equipment. We do have some electronic equipment that we can get into generically get into trucks and read trouble codes and try and figure out what the check engine light is telling us. So this is what I was talking about. This is what we call the bevel box. And that short shaft you were looking at is the one sitting back here. The engine spins the fan. The span transfers the power to this bevel box, which turns the reels. These are equipped with shear bolts right here. So if these should hit something hard, a rock, a tree trunk or something, these bolts will break, and that's our safety, so we don't tear up the box, the gearbox. We go through a lot of pins. Typical. Bud Hamey, who's running the area plows, he'll change a set of those pins 5 to 6 times a day.
Oh, wow.
He'll go into a picnic area, and it's all staked out nice, and he's cutting what should be the driveway. Well, they put a picnic table in there, and you can't see it, and he hits the picnic table. Well, that'll shear a pin, and he has to change them. So, this is what we call a area plow because it has what's called a directional chute. That top of that chute can spin 180 degrees and the hood can come down, so you can really control where you're putting the snow. The bigger plows that go out on the roads, they can only blow left or blow right. This one is a little more complicated, a little more finesse on where it can put snow.
More parts to break.
More parts to break too, yeah. So yeah, up inside there is one 8V92, puts out about 410 horsepower, and all that engine does is drive the head. Back here, you have a smaller 8.2. And this basically runs the hydraulics, runs the transmission to run the plow, and give the operator his heat. So there are 2 engines on most plows.
And the most wear and tear is probably
The big engine.
on the big one.
Yes, yeah. What happened, well, I think I told you that already. There's a dual hydraulic pump. It's right underneath where this grease spot is. It does 2 things. It's buried down in there. Half of it runs the hydraulics for the head lift and for that chute spinning. The other half is for steering only. So it's a dual purpose pump, and it's a vane pump. And we've not had good luck with it. We'd like to change that, which is why this is broke. It's the little blue thing down in there. And it's a pain to change, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah, I see it there.
Trouble with plowing on these nice days, it's a nice day to plow, but we worry about heat buildup. They'll start to overheat, especially the big engines. You'll see everybody with their doors open and everything, you know, when they're running them.
So how long will it take you to get this thing back up and running?
What we did, we had one almost identical to it, and what we did was, rather than running it off the belt drive, we modified the radiator and mounted the pump back down here with a drive shaft. And instead of a vane pump, we went to a load sensing pump, where if you weren't using it, it wouldn't pump very little oil, but when you tried to turn to steer or use your hydraulics, it would then increase its volume and its power to compensate for what you wanted. And it was a way more efficient pump and a way more efficient to drive it rather than belts. So we might do that with this plow. I'm not sure what management wants to go with it. It worked well on the other one. The reason why we got rid of the other one was it had a hydrostatic drive and the frame cracked on it. And so it was like, it wasn't worth fixing at that point. So we basically scrapped it out.